Welcome and thank you for joining us for our Thursday Treasure program, where we go through some of the lesser seen objects in the museum's collection. My name is Claire Menard and I'm the programs manager here at the Westport Museum for History and Culture. At the museum, we are pleased to offer free programming. We do have a donation link if you are so inclined. The Westport Museum is not an agency of the town of Westport, so any support you can offer us is greatly appreciated. During our program, if you have any questions, please enter them in the comments box, and our chat moderator will respond to any appropriate questions. Today's Thursday Treasure topic is maps. A map might seem like a simple and rather straightforward item. Most of us who own smartphones hold a map in our hand daily. However, there are many different types of maps which reveal different layers of information about the land around us. I have with me some different maps of Westport I'd like to share with you today. You might notice I only have two maps with me on the table. This is because most of our maps are unfortunately too small or detailed to show up well on camera, so we will instead be providing pictures that will pop up on the screen as I describe them. We have sorted these maps in chronological order, going from the earliest to the most recent map. So up first, we have a map which will appear on the screen. This map from 1878 is known as View of Westport, Connecticut, and has a very interesting story. This map was actually created using a weather balloon. An illustrator went up in the air in this balloon to get a view of the landscape and drew what he saw. While this is a very clever method, this made the map vulnerable to some inaccuracies, like certain areas and buildings being out of scale. What we see here can give us a good idea of the landscape, but really should just be used as a jumping off point. It is also interesting to note which locations are marked on the key at the bottom of the map. They consist primarily of businesses with a few residences as well as government buildings. Now, this map we actually sell in our gift shop, so if you want your very own copy, you can come and purchase one for yourself. Up next, we have a map from 1912, which shows oyster grounds, hence its name, from Westport, specifically the area containing Campo Beach, Mill Pond, and Saugatuck River. This map, as noted, was created as part of the biennial report of the State Shellfish Commission. Fishing and oyster grounds are actually taken very seriously, and you need to have thorough documentation of where you fish and when. However, these noted boundaries are not physical landmarks one can go out and see, but instead man-made lines dividing the water. In this sense, this map is not made up so much to show the geography and layout of Westport as it is to give a visible layout of the oyster deeds in existence. Really, it's a good example of how maps are not always objective, but are subject to politics, the economy, and what is deemed important enough to literally draw onto our landscape. And if you'd like to know more about map making and street names, we recently held a Chats on the Past with author Deirdre Mask about her book, The Address Book, which we will link and you can go check out. Up next, we are going to jump to 1933 with a map that is titled Westport, Greens Farms, and Saugatuck, 1648 to 1933. This map we are showing you is a reproduction, not the original. This is a reproduction from the book Greens Farms, Connecticut by George Penfield Jennings, names some locals might recognize. George Penfield Jennings was the Squire of Elmstead. This map was actually published by the Westport Historical Society in 1966, which is known today as the Westport Museum, so that's us. The map I am showing you today, as I mentioned, is not an original copy, so do keep this in mind while taking a look. This is why it is in such good condition. This map shows many notable places and streets locals may recognize, but also shows us some inaccuracies and personal biases of the illustrator. You may note a location towards the bottom right listed as Aunt Charlotte Jennings's house. While this may not be of note to us, the viewers, it was a location the author thought important enough to mark down since it was a family member's home. Also notice the bankside farmer properties a little bit below Aunt Jennings' house that are neatly cut into equal parts. There is no evidence to show the properties were actually divided as such, and this may just be the illustrator's interpretation or best guess of where the properties were divided. You can also see how concentrated certain areas of the map are labeled, but others are very sparse. The author may have known and been more acquainted with this area than the surrounding ones like Saugatuck. This shows us how maps, like I mentioned, are not always an objective view of a location, but are influenced by the personal experience and opinions of the cartographer, in this case, George Penfield Jennings. Before moving on to the next map, I want to briefly talk about a section of the map you'll see towards the bottom known as Sherwood Island. This island was named for the Sherwood family, which moved to the area in the late 1700s. Farming and agriculture were big parts of the economy, and the Sherwoods operated a mill. Much of the mill's profits came from its production of cornmeal, kiln-dried cornmeal to be more specific, which was then sent to the West Indies to feed enslaved people. Westport, and the North as a whole, is often removed from the narrative of slavery in the Americas, yet places like Westport actively profited off of the slave trade, and many local families owned enslaved people. If you want to know more about Westport's attitudes surrounding slavery, I encourage you to come see our new student-curated exhibit called Reluctant Liberators, Westport in the Civil War, which is free to view right here in our programs gallery until November of 2023. Now up next, we have a map that is actually on the table with me, so we can take a look at it right here. This is the Sanborn Company map. So this is part of a series of insurance map of Westport that, as I said, were created in 1940 by the Sanborn Map Company based out of Pelham, New York. We'll put up a detailed photo of the cover so you can actually see what is written on the front. The museum holds insurance maps just like this one, dating all the way back to the 1880s. As an insurance map, this map focuses on businesses instead of residential areas. Some residential areas are marked, but not in detail. And here I will open up the map, and I'm actually going to find a specific map, and I will tell you why in just a moment. Went a little too far, so we're going to backtrack to this map right here. So these maps were also called fire maps because they were issued to places like fire departments. These maps were so useful because they gave incredibly detailed depictions of the layout of each structure. The color coding on this map, which we'll pull up a photo of, tells you what materials were used to construct each building. For example, pink represents brick, blue is stone, so on and so forth. This map may be over 80 years old, but some of the buildings still exist today. Fire maps are considered very accurate because they had to be useful, and so we consider these a fairly reliable source. It's really something you can take at face value. So this map, the one I have opened up to, and I'll tilt a little bit so you can get a better look. So this map was actually used to help write our Saugatuck Stories walking tour, to cross-reference where certain buildings and businesses that have since moved or been demolished once stood. This map shown right now is of the area right by the Westport train station where the tour starts. These lines over here represent the train tracks, and right here on the westbound side is where the tour starts, and we circle up and all the way around. And I'll just point out a couple notable businesses that some locals might recognize or remember. Right here is the L.H. Galt & Son, Inc. And right over here next to it, maybe a little difficult to see because the map is bent, this was the fire station. It was Saugatuck Hose Company number 4. And down here, there is a factory. This has been several different factories throughout the years and is a stop on our tour if you would like to know more. I'm going to close this map up for now, and we're going to move up to our next map. So this is unlike any of the others because this is an actual photograph. This photo was taken by R.P. Lentini in 1965 and shows us, as is noted on the back of the photograph, a view over Longshore, including Saugatuck Shores, looking towards Norwalk Power Plant. And if you look real closely, you can actually see the power plant right at the top of the photograph. It's a little bit faded, but you can see it standing. Aerial photography like this was the precursor to satellite photography that we see today on places like Google Maps, where you can go and get a visual looking above almost any place in the world. This is essentially a more advanced version of the first map, the one taken from a weather balloon in 1878. We started seeing more and more aerial photography used for mapping locations in the 1920s. While cameras have existed since the early 19th century, aerial photography was perfected during World War I as it was being used to help spot enemy territory. And the last map I have for you today is another one I have here. It's a fairly large map, and so we have it nice and spread out. This map is actually not of Westport. You can see the Saugatuck River right on the edge here, but this is instead of the neighboring Norwalk. This map is known as Surficial Geologic Map of the Norwalk South Quadrangle, Fairfield County, Connecticut. Quite a mouthful. And was made in 1968 by Harold E. Bald. This is, as the title tells us, a geological map showing us a wide range of Norwalk's geological features. This is a color-coded map, and the key, which we'll pull up for you to take a look at, tells us what each color means. So, for example, red patches, which you'll see many throughout, represent bedrock outcrops. The light blue areas are swamp deposits, characterized by plant debris with salt and silt in poorly drained basins. The purple on the map, and there's a good amount of purple here, represents glaciofluvial deposits, which consist of stratified or layered gravel and sand deposits that were dropped off by melting glaciers. This map is fairly clearly differently from the others. Geology is considered a hard science, and humans did not create these characteristics in the sense that we create street names and houses or property boundaries. Humans did not create the geological makeup of the area. We still can see streets and whatnot noted on the map, but they are not the highlight of this map. The only parts humans did influence, and we'll pull the photo back up so you can get a bit of a better look for yourself, are the brown lines, which are fairly straight. And this is because they represent artificial till, which is mainly for filling things like roads and railways. So these sections were actually placed down by humans, and that does show the human influence on the landscape, even at the geological level. Now, these are all the maps we have for you today, but join us next month for our Thursday treasure on mirrors. From the ornate to the simple, mirrors are fascinating objects meant to reflect their surroundings both literally and figuratively. Vanity will not be frowned upon in this discussion, where we reflect on some of our collection's greatest mirrors. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you have a lovely rest of your day.